For generations, whenever tensions rise in the Middle East, serious Bible readers, men who have walked with the scriptures for decades, quietly turn to Isaiah chapter 17. The opening words land with sobering force. The burden of Damascus. Behold, Damascus is taken away from being a city, and it shall be a ruinous heap. Many have understood this as a direct prophecy of total and final destruction for one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities on earth. Streets silenced, flocks lying down where markets once thrived, with no one to frighten them. The fortress of Ephraim gone, the glory of Jacob thinned out like gleanings after the harvest. You may have read this chapter dozens, even hundreds of times in your King James, your NIV, or your ESV. You may have heard it discussed in Bible studies and prophecy teachings for years. But here is the quiet truth. The Hebrew text holds layers your English translation simply cannot carry. Details preserved in the Masoretic Text for nearly 3,000 years. Today, we're going to slow down, open the original Hebrew, and examine the actual words, their established meanings across the canon, the grammar the Spirit inspired, and the patterns the text itself repeats. We will look carefully at what this oracle says about Damascus, about Ephraim and Israel, and most importantly, about the human heart that forgets its maker. This is not speculation. This is not theory building. This is verse by verse, word by word attention to the Hebrew in its immediate context in the book of Isaiah. I will let you draw your own conclusions from what the text actually says. One question we will carry until the final moments of this study. Since this oracle deliberately binds Damascus and Ephraim together under the same word of judgment, what does the Hebrew reveal about their shared outcome and about the response God calls for from every generation that hears it? Let us first honor what most careful readers see in their English Bibles. The chapter opens with a masah, a burden, a weighty prophetic oracle that demands to be carried and heeded. In Isaiah, this word repeatedly introduces serious messages of warning and judgment. Behold, hinei, the Hebrew command to stop and look closely. Damascus is musar meir, removed, caused to depart from being a functioning city. It becomes me mapala, a heap of ruins. The cities of Eror are forsaken for flocks that lie down with none to make them afraid. The fortress ceases from Ephraim. The kingdom departs from Damascus. The remnant of Aram will be like the glory of the children of Israel, made thin. Then comes the harvest imagery, a reaper gathering the standing grain, gleanings left behind in the valley of Rephaim, an olive tree beaten, only 2 or 3 berries on the uppermost bough, 4 or 5 on the fruitful branches. Scarcity, diminishment, reduction. This is what most people understand, and they are not wrong. The language is clear and solemn. Here is the first thing that stops many readers in their tracks. The Hebrew verb forms in these opening verses carry a passive force. Something acts upon Damascus and Ephraim, but the text does not name the agent here. It simply declares the result with divine certainty. Yet the Hebrew is doing something even deeper. Then comes the dramatic pivot that defines the entire chapter. In that day, a man will look to his Maker, and his eyes will regard the Holy One of Israel. He will turn away from the altars his own hands made, from the Asherim and sun pillars his fingers fashioned. Here, in the same breath, the text holds both severe judgment on cities and kingdoms and the quiet turning of a man's heart toward the true God. The thinning of glory becomes the very thing that lifts eyes away from idols. Wait, this actually changes everything many of us have assumed about this chapter. Let me ask you something straight. Have you ever noticed how judgment and hope sit right next to each other in this chapter? Most people miss that tension completely in English. The text does not explicitly claim that one single historical event exhausts every layer. It raises questions the larger biblical story invites us to consider. So what is the Hebrew emphasizing most strongly? We will return to this thread. Let us walk slowly through the Hebrew itself. Masa Damasek, Hine Damasek Musar Mer, Vehayeta Me Mapala. Masa is a burden, a weighty pronouncement. Hine means behold, pay attention. Damasek is musar, removed from its identity as a city. The root sur means to turn aside or depart. In this form, the city is caused to lose its living urban character and becomes a mapala, a fallen heap, total desolation. The cities of Aroer are azuvot, abandoned. Flocks ravtsu lie down peacefully, they ein macharid, with no one to frighten them. The Mivtsar, the stronghold, ceases from Ephraim, the Mamlaka, the kingdom, from Damasek. The remnant of Aram becomes like the kavud, the weight and glory of Israel, but diminished. The text intentionally pairs them. Their fates are linked. Bayom hachu, in that day, the glory of Yaakov Yedal, made thin. His fatness, Yerazeh, grows lean. Like a field after the reaper, like an olive tree after beating. This remnant imagery appears elsewhere in Scripture, in Isaiah 24:13 and Micah 7:1, consistently carrying the idea of scarcity following judgment, the turning point. Bayom hachu, yeshech ha'adam al osechu, ve'enav el kedosh Yisrael tirena. In that day, the man will regard his Maker. His eyes will turn to the Holy One of Israel, not to the work of his hands, not to Asherim or Chamanim. Human religion versus living relationship with the Creator. The contrast is sharp and deliberate. Strong cities become places of desolation. Why? Because you have forgotten the God of your salvation and have not remembered the Tsur Mauzecha, the rock of your stronghold. You plant pleasant plants and foreign slips, but the harvest brings grief. Tsur, rock, is a powerful image throughout Scripture for God as refuge and strength. Nations roar like the sea, rush like mighty waters. But he rebukes them, and they flee like chaff before the wind, like dust before the storm. Evening brings terror. By morning, they are no more. This is the portion of those who plunder God's people. Did you catch the powerful movement in the Hebrew? Judgment on cities, shared diminishment, remnant remains. A man regards his Maker, remembrance of the rock. God rebukes the raging nations. The structure itself preaches. This is one of those places where the Hebrew flows like a sermon, built into the very grammar. Now step back and see this oracle inside the Bible's grand redemptive story. In Eden, humanity turned from the Creator to its own wisdom and the work of its hands. The fall set the pattern. Israel was called to be a light to the nations, yet again and again forgot the God of its salvation, forming alliances, planting strange slips, trusting in fortresses instead of the rock. The prophets, including Isaiah, stand in that painful tension, announcing judgment on unfaithfulness while pointing to a remnant that would return to the Holy One. This is not abstract theology. Picture an ordinary man in 8th century BC, Ephraim or Judah. He watches political alliances with Damascus form and then shatter under Assyrian pressure. Cities burn, fields empty, glory thins. In the middle of collapse, these ancient words confront him and us with the same question: do you remember the rock? The New Testament later picks up the themes of remnant and in that day, pointing to the Messiah through whom eyes truly turn to the Holy One. Yet we remain anchored in what Isaiah itself states. I will let you draw your own conclusions from what the text actually says. Here is the central revelation the Hebrew has preserved for 3,000 years. This oracle does not treat Damascus in isolation. It deliberately binds the ancient city and the northern kingdom of Ephraim together. The remnant of Aram mirrors the thinning glory of Jacob. Both experience the fruit of forgetting God and trusting in human power and alliances. But right at the heart of the chapter stands the pivot, not despair, but hope. In that day, a man will regard his Maker. The structure is masterful. Glory stripped away, remnant remains. Eyes turn to the Creator. God sovereignly rebukes the chaos of the nations. The text does not explicitly limit this pattern to one time in history. It presents a divine principle that echoes through the ages. Damascus has seen destruction and rebuilding across centuries. The strong language of a ruinous heap raises honest questions about ultimate fulfillment. Yet the biblical text itself gives no modern timeline and names no contemporary actors. It simply describes conditions and calls every generation to the same response. Regard your Maker and remember the rock. If this pattern has been embedded in the Hebrew for 3,000 years, why does it still speak so directly to the human heart today? Tell me in the comments what stands out to you most when you read Isaiah 17 in light of the original Hebrew. Every thread in this chapter finds its resolution in the text's own emphasis. Isaiah 17 refuses to separate geopolitical judgment from personal spiritual responsibility. It binds them together. It calls Israel and every reader who hears these words to turn from handmade religion and forgotten dependence back to the rock of their stronghold. It points toward a day when a man will look to his Maker, and his eyes will regard the Holy One of Israel. This is a textual investigation, not a prediction. The timing of these events belongs to God alone, Matthew 24:36. In that day, a man will look to his Maker, and his eyes will regard the Holy One of Israel.